Welcome to the BEASTwriter Family, where social media engagement is encouraged. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and we have the pleasure of having, you guys know who he is, no introduction necessary, Mike Shumann, Super Bowl winning quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, and obviously played his football, college ball at Florida State. Shu, thank you for coming on the show again, and welcome to the BEASTwriter Family. How are you doing today?
Doing good, Ryan, and thanks for having me on. I got to give my Lady Seminole softballers a shout out. They made it to the finals, thrashing Alabama 2 straight in the losers bracket. They play tonight against Oklahoma, so that'll be my one shout out.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, Alabama was like killing, bro, right? Until they met Florida State.
The pitcher, I think it was Haley Fouts, threw a perfect game in her last game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they decided to sit her in game 1 to use her for game 2. They knocked her out with 8 runs in 3 innings. So love the sport.
That's crazy. Yeah. One of the kids I used to coach, I know this is kind of transitioning, going off football for a little bit, but one of the kids I used to coach when I was a beat writer with the 49ers, and then also I coached a private middle school, Stratford, here in San Jose. He's now off to college. He now plays ball at Stanford, and the guy's just killing. Like, the guy literally can make the major league, like he can make the MLB. Like, this guy, his name's Eddie Park. I want to give a shout out to him because he's just killing at Stanford right now. I mean, the guy, I knew he was talented. Okay. I knew he was talented in any sport that he touched. Any ball that he played, he was just good. Baseball, basketball, football, the guy was good. I saw the talent. I got to be honest. I didn't think he had D1 talent, but I knew he was good. He was ahead of his time. He was always playing up, but he's really turning heads here in the Bay Area. So yeah, Eddie Park, man.
I remember that name.
Yeah, Eddie Park, bro. The guy's a beast. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about play some catch up a little bit. What is your take on Trey Lance? Do you like that move? And what do you think he's going to bring to the table?
Well, I think like everybody speculating beforehand that you're not going to move up to number 3 to take Mac Jones,
right?
The quarterback from Alabama, but he's getting rave reviews up in New England. So he's an accurate quarterback. I think he would have been perfect in Kyle's offense, but I think Kyle would have taken a lot of abuse moving up to number 3 to get him when he could have got him at 12 because he went 15th, I think.
Yes, he did.
And I think he would have been really effective in that offense. He's accurate. But I think Trey Lance can take that offense to another level. You don't really have the run pass option with Garoppolo. I mean, you can fake it, but it's almost like every time he's going to drop back and throw it and hand it off. So I think Trey could take it to another level. He's only played about 20 college games, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got a lot of learning to do, but it's a perfect situation with Garoppolo, can play this year. Let the kid kind of grow and then see what you got next year because they can get rid of Jimmy without any repercussions. And I'll use an example. When Joe Montana came in 1979, Steve DeBerg was our starting quarterback. And I always joked DeBerg to Shumann sounded too much like a Jewish law firm. So they went with Montana to Clark. But Joe used to come in. Bill would put him in certain situations, and usually down around the goal line to get him used to playing at the NFL level. So Steve, who I called Iceberg, Joe would come running in. Steve would take us down to the 10-yard line. Here comes Joe. And I'd look at Ice, and I'd go, Ice, Joe's coming in for the glory. And Steve would get upset. He had the field. Joe would come in and score, and build his confidence up. And so Steve knew the writing was on the wall, and I had a feeling the same with Dwight playing behind me. But that's what they can do with Lance. You can create a little package for him every game.
Yeah.
And either use them during the game or use them when the team gets ahead. Because you and I have talked about this. This team's ready to go back to the Super Bowl now.
Yeah.
Now, the defense will be interesting without Saleh there. So that'll be an interesting kind of thing to keep an eye on. But I think Trey Lance brings a lot to the table, but I don't think he's ready right now.
Right.
He might be 2 to 3 years away, or, we'll see how fast he develops, how fast he can pick up this offense. But he played in a similar offense, a pro-style offense, in college, so it'll be easier for him, taking snaps under the center, not doing all shotgun. So I like the pick. I kind of had a feeling that was going to be it because, like I said, he can take what Kyle already has to another level with his ability to move with his legs.
My next question to you is, would you have taken Justin Fields over Trey Lance because they bring a similar skill set? One has higher potential, obviously Trey Lance, but Justin Fields is a more NFL-ready quarterback. coming and playing at a Power 5 Big Ten conference. What direction do you think Bill Walsh would go in, and what direction would you go in if you were the GM?
That's an interesting call. I think Bill would have taken Trey. Bill loved kind of projects. You know, he brought James Owens out of UCLA, was his first #1 pick. He was a hurdler and he was a running back, but Bill thought he could turn him into a wide receiver. Didn't work out. Tried a safety, didn't work out. Finally traded him to Tampa, where he had a decent little career as a running back. And then he signed Ronaldo Nehemiah as the hurdler.
Oh, that's
former
right.
World-class hurdler, and actually cost me another ring. No offense, Ronaldo. But he didn't develop either. But Bill felt like he could turn anybody into a great quarterback, and the same was with Joe. You know, Joe wasn't a superstar in college, but played in big games at Notre Dame. So I think he would have gone with Trey. I'm not sure what happened with Justin. You know, the guy's tough. He's got a great work ethic. You know, that was that typical thing during the draft. Somebody questioned his work ethic, and he drops, you know, way down in the draft. So I think he's going to be a quality quarterback. Tell you the truth, where'd he go? Chicago?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would start him right away. You know,
You'd
they
start
have
him
nothing to lose up there. Who do they got? They got Andy Dalton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would go right away with Justin Fields. If he has a feel for it in the preseason, I'd go with him, you know, because he's going to be your future. Let him start playing and get used to playing in the NFL. So that would have been a tough choice, though. I think a lot of people would have taken Fields because he had more quality games at a higher level and big-time games at Ohio State. So it's going to be interesting because if Trey Lance does not work out, if he can't pick up this offense, they're hamstrung again at the quarterback position. What's it been now? Since Jeff Garcia, where we've had a solid quarterback where you can depend on? You know, it's a long time to find your franchise quarterback.
Jeez Louise, Jeff Garcia. I was still a fan back then. I was in high school back then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hell,
Jeff Garcia.
Now.
Jeff Garcia came out of nowhere. Came out of Calgary, right? The Calgary Football League or whatever, CFL. And then obviously local boy, Gilroy kid. And wasn't his dad like a really well-known high school football coach
he
or something
coached
like that?
at
Was it Gavlin?
Yeah,
no,
Gavlin College. Yeah,
it was Gavlin.
Right. Yeah, so he was a really respected junior college coach and great motivator, just like Jeff is. Jeff has a lot of quarterback camps now and football camps. So, yeah, it's just been a long time. You know, we went from just, you know, a little bit of everything, Alex Smith to Colin Kaepernick to, you know, prior to that, JT O'Sullivan, you know, played at Davis. It's been an unbelievable, you know, ride at the quarterback position. And I think Kyle was so obsessed with Kirk Cousins, he passed on Mahomes, a lot of great quarterbacks, thinking he was going to get Cousins, didn't get him. And then he, you know, I think they kind of made a play for Garoppolo because it fell in their lap. So I think you can put a little of that on Kyle's shoulders. And then now the pressure's really on him to figure out what he's going to do. So I think Jimmy's going to be solid if he can stay healthy.
Yeah. If he can stay healthy, that's a big question mark. Here's a question to you. Mike Shumann, in all your years playing with the Niners, did you experience any injuries or saw anything other OTAs? Don Lovato from the BEASTwriter Family asked you. So what's your take on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, if you don't play in the NFL without getting hurt. You know,
right.
So my third year, I started 78, 79. Bill came in 79. Blew out my knee in a preseason game in practice in 80. Dwight Clark was behind me, got the job. Bill asked me to stay around the following year to make sure he develops because I asked to be traded. I was a starter. I didn't want to be a backup because back then they only played 2 wide receivers. So if you weren't a starter, you didn't get a whole lot of reps. And Bill said, wait around one more year. We went to the Super Bowl. Glad I waited around. And so the rest is history. Now, I've seen everybody I've ever played with has – you know, faced an injury, and now we're really feeling the beating we took back then because it was a different game when I played, a lot dirtier quarterbacks. Like Tom Brady couldn't have played in those days because he couldn't have taken the beating that Joe took, for instance.
Yeah.
But I see him now at reunions. We're all just comparing our injuries. Hey, can you walk? How long does it take you to get out of bed? You know, how much Advil do you have to take every day?
Wow.
So it's a whole different game, but if you ask anybody I played with, they'd all do it over again.
That's crazy. So you mentioned all these injuries. Did you hear the news that Justin School tore his ACL in yesterday's practice, and now Tarvarius Moore tore his Achilles? So two players, backup players at their respective positions, top backups, are now out for the year.
That's unbelievable. When they put that turf field in to practice on, it's hard. I did this in St. Louis, the old St. Louis Cardinals. They practiced and played at Busch Stadium. So we practiced and played on the turf. We had more injuries, same thing, Achilles, knees, and turf toe, which can be debilitating for a skilled position. And it was always a complaint. We need grass to practice on. I think they have one grass field out there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they should be holding all their practices on that grass, and then practice maybe Friday, Saturday on the turf just to get a feel for it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen a team, they blew out their training staff, 2 years ago when they had all those injuries. Last year it happened again. So you can't keep blaming it on the staff. Maybe it is the field, because they don't hit in practice like we used to.
Yeah.
These are walkthroughs where guys are getting hurt.
You can't hit. Even in your shells, you can't do anything.
That's what I mean. So, and because they're making so much money now, you can't afford these injuries, which they have, and it's just getting out of control. And then they signed another torn ACL at the safety position. I can't remember his name right now, but why do they keep bringing in these safeties when, they're kind of sold on the guy's been back there, the longest tenured player they have back there, Jimmy Ward.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know. I just got in. I didn't hear that. And wow, that's a shame. And I don't know. I've never seen so many Achilles in football. That was never a major injury in football. And it's got to be turf.
You think it has to be the turf? I don't know, man. It's just like, I know we can't blame the strength and conditioning staff, but at some point you have to blame somebody. Somebody has to be blamed. I know, as unfair as it seems. Yes, I think turf does play a role, obviously, because of footing and stuff, and you can plant wrong. A lot of things can happen there. But okay, I'm going to put in perspective. We've seen practices. We've seen how different coaches practice differently, right? Some push, some pull back. It's up to the coach's responsibility to pull back the player, because the player is going to want to push himself and go 110%. The players that I just mentioned, in Justin School and Tarvarius Moore, are both borderline in contract years, right? Tarvarius Moore is in the last year of his contract, so he's going to push himself in practice. If you're seeing this as a coach and you're seeing him going 110%, you don't want to pull back the player and say, hey, don't go 110%. Obviously, you want him to go all out. I mean, he wants to prove himself. But at some point, do you want to take him out and be like, oh, hey, we understand what you're doing. We appreciate your passion. It's only OTAs. Wait till we hit training camp and then slowly work him in that way. I think a lot of these players are pushing themselves to their limits because they're not so sure they're going to get that second contract. I mean, the NFL lifespan is only 2 to 3 years. So is it the coach's responsibility to tailor and formulate some of his practices based on financially where those players are in line? Because again, Trent Williams is not even practicing this week. Obviously he earned it, right? He's a veteran. Right. So he doesn't have to play. You know what you're getting with him. So you teach each player and you coach each player differently, and you address them differently than you would as, an incoming rookie or undrafted rookie free agent, or a player like Tarvarius Moore, a third-round pick fighting for a second contract. How hard is it for a coach to kind of say, hey, look, Tarvarius Moore, we know in your contract year, we're going to take you out a little bit, and then roll in some of these younger guys like, Hufanga, I can't even say his name, Hufanga, the USC safety. Roll in some of these younger guys, let them get reps, and this just bring back Tarvarius Moore a little bit, because you know what you're getting with Tarvarius Moore. You already know what you're getting. He got starting reps last year. He's now entrenched as a starter right now, which Jaquaski Tart returning from injury. Now he's off. But how hard is it as a coach to kind of pull back the player? Because ultimately it's the coach's job to go ahead and do that. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct there. Bill used to say little things like, as a wide receiver, if you see a ball, it's your nature. You're going to go get it.
Yeah.
And I dove for a ball once, kind of injured my ankle a little bit. And Bill just comes over and says, don't dive for balls in practice. But like you talked about, as an athlete, you see it in the air, you're going to go get it. So, yes. And then when you're trying to make a team, like for instance, in the mini camps, you shouldn't have guys getting injured like this. Let the young guys, like you said, play. The obligated mini camp for the veterans is basically just to see who's in shape and who's not. And even there, I'd still kind of taper back on the veteran players. But, back in the day, nobody got a rest. Like, Trent Williams. We all practiced together. Nobody was treated more special than the other. And if they were going to let veterans off, they let all the veterans off, not just, a couple players here and there. So, yeah, it is up to the responsibility. Now, I go back even further. You work out regularly. So are the workouts that they're doing, or is that putting undue stress on their Achilles, maybe doing these power squats, which, a lot of football players do because you want explosion.
Right.
Is
Exactly.
weightlifting kind of putting little tears here and there? Because the training staff's got to know the same thing, when to back off. Because you'll see Kittle working out, for instance. He'll put it on Instagram or something. And I was just sitting there, my God, he's just putting up so much weight, you could get injured before you even get to camp.
Yeah.
So, yes, the coach has got to temper it, I think, in these OTAs, until you get to training camp. You shouldn't be working the veterans too hard where you get injuries like that. But at the same time, when you're putting in a game plan for the week, you got to go full speed to see if the timing, for instance, with the wide receivers and the quarterback works out. Right. So there's a lot of timing issues in football that has to work out. But besides that, because they don't hit, in some ways, I've always questioned that. And you don't hit in practice for a week, then all of a sudden you go to a game, it's the most violent, collision you can find besides a car wreck. Is that causing some injuries because your body is not ready to take those hits? So even if you're in shells, shoulder pads, and helmets, go ahead and pop them, give them a little pop so your body, it's just not, So I don't know. There's this a lot to be answered there. And it's happening too often with the 49ers. I thought last year with COVID, you're going to see a lot more injuries because they didn't have training camp.
Yeah.
And, but I think this year you have a full camp, full thing go, and we'll see what happens. But yes, I think the coaches got to keep an eye on a player because you're going to have those type A players that can't go half speed, can't go 3/4. Yeah. And they're always the obnoxious ones in practice. It's like, dude, settle down. Because guys like that can just have a collision with you in practice and get you injured. So you want to keep that from happening too. So I don't know. There's a lot to be said there. And as I said, you work out. So I ask you that. Could that be putting undue stress on joints and Achilles and tendons that maybe is unnecessary?
Absolutely. I think a lot of these players, they have their own workout routines and programs when in season, right? That's the strength and conditioning coach. But what happens behind closed doors? I see too often on Instagram these players that they do these like powerlifting moves, and it's like they're trying to gain strength, and I get it, but they're going about the wrong way. Eric Armstead, okay, go put Eric Armstead. He was doing abs horribly wrong from a punching bag, and his hip flexors are thrown off, his kinetic chain is thrown off, and he's going to develop back problems. These are things that you see and you're looking at it and like, wow, these guys get paid X. They don't know what they're doing. I'm not saying everyone. And I'm not saying Eric Armstead I'm not just pointing him out as, because of whatever our beef. I'm just pointing it out. I mean, I see it and I'm just like, what are you doing? If you want to work on your abs, why don't you do some leg raises? That's less stress on the joints. And now you're working out in a more efficient manner. See, a lot of these guys, they put on and they're like squatting where the squats are off too. So like, everything has a direct impact on it. And again, I think that does play a small role, but more importantly than that, I think the strength and conditioning coach has to do a better job. And I spoke about this right before you came on an earlier live stream, is the strength and conditioning coach should talk. Like if you were my player, I'd be like, all right, Shu, exactly. I'm going to piggyback on what you were saying, Shu. So echoing your analysis and say, hey, Shu, what were you doing in the off season? Were you conditioned? Were you working out? Yes, coach, I was working out. Okay, what were you doing? I did a little bit of cardio. Okay, what were you doing for your cardio? Oh, I was playing basketball for 30 to 45 minutes a day. Okay, cool. How many days a week were you doing that? And you would tell me, and I'd be like, okay, did you do any strength lifting or any strength training during that time? Not really, just play basketball. Okay, cool. So then I have a starting point of where I need you to be. And then when Joe Schmo comes in and says, hey, you know what? I was actually doing the opposite. I didn't play basketball, have no cardio capacity whatsoever, but I was strength training and I was like George Kittle. I was powerlifting, power squatting, doing all these things, bench pressing 500 pounds, whatever the case may be. And I'd be like, okay, so you were strength training. Okay, so we have to work on you, on your work capacity in terms of your cardio and conditioning. And for you, Shu, your cardio and conditioning seems set. So we're going to tailor back and get your muscle memory back as far as your strength and coordination is concerned. When you can't mirror the two, and then you're just having masses of people and just saying, all right, guys, we're all just going to start off and hit the gym and we're going to do a push-pull day. And today we're just going to do bench press, squats, and a lot of powerlifting. Well, that's where injuries are going to occur because these guys, their muscle memory is not connected. Like yours is different from the guy next to you, and so forth. And then it breaks it down by position, right? So different positional units. Obviously, you played wide receiver. Let's say I played. Let's say, for instance, I played defensive line. So I would be doing different compound movements than you would. And that would have an impact on the field and correlation on the field because what you do on the field in their bag drills or whatever the case may be, you're moving on your lateral agility. But aside from that, your upper body, what are you working on, in your strength room? And then how does that translate onto the football field? That's why I see there's a disconnect. You know what I mean? And then also, aside from that, comes down to nutrition, right? What are you eating? Because if you're not getting your BCAAs, your branched chain amino acids during your workout and you're just drinking water, if you're drinking Gatorade, well, that's a lot of sugar. Yes, it's electrolytes, but it's a lot of sugar. And when you're doing that, you're going to spike your insulin levels. And then what's going to happen is it's going to have a direct impact on the foods that you eat afterwards. So that's why I'm just like, I don't understand. And shoot, we've seen this all the time when we're at Levi Stadium. We see what the players eat in the cafeteria, bro. It's not good.
Well, it's funny you say that because we didn't have all that nutrition back in my day. And then we got programs. Al Vermeil was our strength coach. Dick Vermeil's brother went on to the Chicago Bulls after us. But he would give us programs to work on in the off season that were football related. I think what you're saying is a lot of players will get away from the football related, just do the normal bench, squats, things that maybe don't cater to football and might throw them out of whack, So like you talk about your hip flexors on, and so you got to get everything working together. I think Tiger said that once, his glutes weren't firing. So he had to get his hamstring work back connected to his glutes and his core, but that comes back to the strength coach. He should be giving these guys each a program in the off season to work on. And yeah, you can stray away from it occasionally if you want to do something different, but that all comes down to it. And when you're not hitting in practice and you're making the money you're making now, you should be, such a professional. And I always stayed here in the off season, so I would like to go in the facility and work out. And there was enough of us that did it back then, Bill Ring and I and Ricky Jervis. So there's a lot to be said in all that. And it'll be interesting to see if they kind of have corrected what any mistakes they might be making with that training staff. But there's too much money involved in it now to have this many injuries, and the frustration of fans, coaches, players alike. This is what, 3 or 4 straight years now where we've had these issues. So we'll have to see this year if it is any different.
The common denominator is a strength and conditioning coach.
I know. Dustin Perry. I couldn't even tell you who it is now, but
it's Dustin Perry. All right. So it was when Mark Uyama was the strength and conditioning coach, good friend of mine. He had those guys dialed in, man. And when Ray Wright came in, he was there for a couple years, and then Dustin Perry worked under him, and now Dustin Perry is now the strength and conditioning coach, and he was an assistant strength and conditioning coach over at Minnesota. He wasn't even the head strength and conditioning coach at Minnesota before he joined the San Francisco 49ers. Now he was working on, as assistant strength and conditioning coach. Now he got the title of strength and conditioning coach. But if there's anyone to blame, you have to blame the strength and conditioning coach. Because like you said, you have what's called, I guess you would call it homework assignments, right? In the off season. Hey man, here's something you don't have to really do it, but just do some of the things. And so you can kind of stay in shape, somewhat conditioned. Now, if you delve away from this plan, obviously, we would have to touch base with this when we return, and we can kind of go over exactly what you're doing on an individual case-by-case basis. I don't think that the Niners are doing that. Now, I don't know if they're doing that or not, but what I can tell you is, how long that would take to really sit down
with somebody? And maybe he has a program just for the entire team and not individual positions. But the fact he's been at Minnesota and here, and even though if he was an assistant, he's just moving up, and hopefully he makes some changes. But to be at 2 different organizations, maybe he learned a lot from a different team that might apply here also. But that's when they're paying that much money, like I said, fans come out to watch your star players, and I'm not going to put down the people who you're not on a roster if you can't play in the NFL.
Yeah, right.
Some players are better than others, so you just want to see your key star players play. And boy, that'd be nice if we had Jimmy for a full year. I'd see where Raheem Mostert's already got a little injury. What's the other kid, the big back?
Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah, Jeff, he's hurt too. So it's like, man, what is going on? So I'm not sure what it is. I just It's just changed. We hit every day in practice. You know, we hit Wednesday, Thursday, Friday we'd ease up, Saturday walk through, and so we weren't in shells till Friday. We were in pads
Right.
Wednesday, Thursday. You know, so I'm not sure if that's part of it, but the collisions are so violent, and then on turf to boot. You know, you plant your leg wrong one way and get hit, your knee or your ankle or your Achilles is going to go. You know, so I was never a fan of turf. I'd love to see everybody go back to grass, but with all the indoor stadiums, you can't do it.
Yeah. Do me a favor. Can you turn up your mic a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. No apologies necessary, Shu.
There you go.
All right. So let's talk about Julio Jones. That was the next big move. Obviously, I've been told that Julio Jones was in the Niners' minds, and obviously it didn't happen because of Trey Lance. Obviously, they gave up so much draft capital. What would you do if you were the Niners GM? Would you have traded a second-round pick and a future fourth-round pick for Julio Jones? Yeah, because that was the trade.
No, not at this point. He's 32 years old. Yeah, you can play to your 40 like Jerry did. But Julio's been nicked. He had his worst year last year. He still caught, I think, 51 for 700 yards, you know. And but he's a beast. He's been a beast, but this league catches up to you. I think at best he's going to be a slot receiver for Tennessee. They got two young receivers, A.J. Brown, I think it is, and that can play on the outside. A.J., they had 2 1,000-yard receivers or close to it last season. So Julio, I think, like Larry Fitzgerald, will be a beast in the slot. And so I think he's a great addition to Tennessee, who has a 2,000-yard rusher, and Derrick Henry, and then now they're adding this extra element for Tannehill. So I think it's a great get for Tennessee. But for the 49ers, I don't think it would have been a good pick. Yeah, he played in Kyle's offense, but they've got some great young receivers. Somebody would have had to sit down, and I just think they got some young guys coming up too that can, you know, Jalen Hurd, who I'd love to see healthy. So I wouldn't have made that move with the Niners at this point in his career. I've lost your voice. Live TV here. Can't hear you. I guess you could edit this out. I don't know what you hit, but I cannot hear you. All right, the buzz stopped, but there you are.
Is it good now?
There you go.
Okay, we're good?
Yes, you need a producer.
I know. Tommy says I hear static now. Jason Ellsworth says no sound. Let's see. So there's no sound on me now?
No, you're fine. You're fine with me anyway.
I am?
Hot. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let's see here.
There you go.
He says there's a buzzing sound, so I don't know if there's
the buzz went away too when you came back on.
Oh, okay, so it's good now. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So no, this is live.
Made that trade at this point in his career.
Question for you. First of all, both of all. Thank you everyone for telling us that we sound good. Yeah, we definitely need new sound producer, good guy. Everyone says you're good. Okay. Question. So Julio Jones, yes, I would agree with you that I would not have made that trade.
15 million. You know, they didn't have that kind of money for.
Yeah, that. But here's some food for thought, Shu. The Niners run 2-back formations personnel more than any other NFL team. If you were to add Julio Jones into the mix, now you're taking Kyle Juszczyk, underutilized Kyle Juszczyk, overvalued Kyle Juszczyk in terms of money to ride the pine. You don't give that guy that kind of bread, especially at the fullback position, to ride the pine. Otherwise, what's the point of keeping him on the roster? He's not even a decoy. He's on the bench in 11 personnel.
I think they signed him way before they knew Julio was going to be on the market. So,
right.
And that kind of helped make their decision. And you're right. You know, I think he's underutilized, especially for the money he's making. There's no fullback that's ever made that money in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a solid player, but, you know, that's a lot of money to pay a guy who seeing the ball maybe 4 or 5 times a game max, you know, so he's making $1 million a touch. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I wouldn't have made that move. Here's some food for thought. Bill Walsh. All right. If he had the option of, this is going to be a good one. of either drafting John Taylor or Julio Jones, who would it be?
Wow. I would probably say Julio Jones because John Taylor went to, God, was it Delaware maybe? Went to college in Delaware. So he was hidden away up there. Bill found him and loved him. And then we all see why now. And if John would have been on another team, he would have been a superstar on that team. But because he was with Jerry Rice his entire career, he played second fiddle. But because Julio played at Alabama, played big time games, he's already guys that come out of this kind of schools know what it's like to play under that kind of pressure. So I think he probably would have went with Julio. Although Bill, like I said, he dug up Jerry Rice out of Mississippi Valley, John Taylor out of Delaware, Joe out of Montana, Notre Dame hadn't played that much. So Bill was great at finding these players. Pee Wee Dwayne Board, he got cut by Pittsburgh. Bill picked him up, turned into be a great player.
Right.
So Bill loved finding those players just to prove that, number one, his offense was catered to anybody. And number two, that he was a guy who could turn not a mediocre college player, but not a superstar, into a great player in the NFL. So
what did Bill see in you that he liked most?
Well, it was funny. I was scrapbooking. Your generation probably doesn't even know what that is, but all the old articles and pictures of me. Because back in the day when I played, only really one or two games were on TV. So a lot of mine came from photographs from Michael Zagaris, who's got a book coming out, by the way, and Dennis Dubois, who were the team photographers. So I just had a lot of that. But I found some letters. I was a rookie with the Miami Dolphins and got let go. And my athletic director at the time, John Bridges at Florida State, sent out letters to a lot of pro coaches he knew, and Bill Walsh being one of them. So Bill got it. I was in Miami where Joe Thomas, who was the 49ers GM, had only been there a couple of years. He was with those great Dolphin teams. So Shula called him. John Bridges called Bill Walsh, who John knew. And I read the letter, and he says, yeah, Mike, had quite a career in such a, it was the dark ages at Florida State when I was there. We didn't win many games. So Bill saw a guy, I think, who would be perfect for his offense. He always liked that possession guy and a speed guy. He had Chip Myers and Isaac Curtis. And Chip was like 6'5", but he was a possession guy. I was 6'2", and Bill just, playing at Florida State, I caught, I think, 136 in 4 years, which is like 250 now, because everybody was running the wishbone back then. So Bill knew I could be a guy that could, I started his first 2 years, be his starter until he found somebody that fit what he looked. And that's what Dwight was. Dwight was like Chip. He was 6'4", 210, could take that beating, catching all 80 balls over the middle. And then Freddie Solomon used to say that to me, Chip and Isaac. And he says, Dwight and Jerry, they're going to be the new Chip and Isaac, and then sure enough, I got traded to Tampa, and Freddie ended his career when Jerry came on. So, but Bill liked the fact that I could run routes. I was perfect for his offense. And a lot of the training reels originally were me. So when he showed young receivers how to run routes, they were me. And, Dwight and I talked about it. Dwight told me, he goes, I learned how to be a receiver from watching you.
Wow.
And I remember Ronnie Lott telling our equipment manager one time, Ted Walsh, he goes, man, that guy runs such unbelievable routes. I don't know why he doesn't play more. And this was after I blew out my knee and Dwight got the gig, kind of thing. So, and like I said, nobody wants to sit on the bench after being a starter for 2 years. So I asked to be traded and ended up going to St. Louis, but anyway, I think it was my ability to run routes, read defenses, make adjustments. And the offense it was perfect for me. So, and that was a consideration with Joe. Joe really couldn't throw the ball down the field that way. He didn't throw a lot of deep balls. And it was kind of a concern early on in his career. And then when he hurt his back and Jeff Kemp took over, Jeff could throw it deep. All of a sudden, Joe came back and could throw the ball deep. So he would work on the deep ball, the post, and the go route. So, Bill, like I said, he always found these little gems hidden in the bushes that, he was going to turn into a superstar player. And I'll be damned if he didn't do it with Joe, Jerry. Roger Craig came out of Nebraska, played fullback and halfback. Not a great career, but yeah. So Tom Rathman, he just found these guys. Hell, when I was there, I bet you couldn't name the running backs on that Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
Ricky Patton, Johnny Davis, and
Yeah.
Bill Ring and Linville Elliott, who was a backup in Cincinnati. But, Bill found these guys that complemented each other. We weren't really fighting over who was the starter and who wasn't, so we played together as a team, and that's how we won that, because San Diego probably should have won that Super Bowl in 1982. They had
Is that with Dan Fouts as the quarterback?
They had Wes Chandler, Chuck Muncie, I think, and they beat Miami in that 6-quarter game, and then lost in the Ice Bowl to Cincinnati because they couldn't throw the ball in that ice cold Cincinnati weather. But every time I see Dan Fouts, he asks me, "How's my Super Bowl ring doing?" Says he felt like that was the year they should have won it. So
good times, dude. Like that's some history right there, man. Like Chargers should have won. Did they have Kellen Winslow? Was Kellen Winslow on that team?
I don't think he was there yet. It was 82. He might have been.
Was that the Eric Coryell offense? Was that way before?
Yeah, was it Anthony Gates maybe or Antonio Gates? But I think they had Charlie, maybe John Jefferson, Charlie Joyner. I don't think Wes Chandler was there yet. Although Wes and I came out at the same time, so he might have been. So they were just unstoppable, So, but just couldn't throw the ball in that cold weather. So.
All right, I have a question for you. Would you be down to have live guests come on here and ask you questions if they wanted that? Okay, so if you guys want, I don't know, some people are shy, but if you guys want to go ahead and do that, I'm going to put it on here. You guys can just click that link below, and then you guys can hop on. Actually, no, that's the wrong link. I got to update that link. Click the link below, and then you guys can ask Shu any questions you have. I know a lot of the people on here are shy, but hopefully they won't be.
Yeah. So.
Let's talk about some other things that we have going on. Obviously, we're talking about, Julio Jones, talking about Joe Montana stories, Bill Walsh stories, which is great. I want to talk about you. What was your favorite run to route? What was your favorite route to run? Yeah.
My best route was the post corner. And it kept me in the league for 8 years. I ran it like 4 or 5 different ways. And when the cover 2 came in with the 2 deep safeties, it was a perfect route for that. And then Bill came up with a post corner post. You break in, you break out, and the DB would jump, and then you go right back up to the post. And when it was wide open, because you took that safety out to the corner. So that was my best route. We ran the 24 double square out a lot, which was just a 12-yard out. You hardly see the out anymore, because of press coverage a lot. So, and then nobody liked running over the middle, but that's kind of where I made a living. So, and once you got over the middle, there's more linebackers because there's a lot of zone back then. And you just had to find the hole. For instance, if the slot receiver would have been around in my day, I would have killed at that position. But I hate to say it, it's the position for the white guy, the possession guy. So, and I used to hate that because I was, 6'2", ran a 4.5 40 and could jump. I had like a 38-inch vertical.
That's crazy.
So, I was just as fast. And but you just kind of got labeled as soon as you came up. And but the post corner was my route. I'll tell you a story. We're playing Tampa, and I might have told it where I was down there with Doug Williams.
Yeah.
Been injured, and somebody got hurt, and the Shumann get in there, and I couldn't find my helmet. So they had to call a timeout, get my helmet, call the play, and it was a post corner. And it was against the Giants, and Gary Wolford was their safety, who was a teammate of mine at Florida State. And I'd run this route on him 100 times in practice, 7-on-7. So I came inside. It was in cover 2. And I looked at him for just a second. He looked me in the eye, and he smiled. And right then I broke out. Just that eye contact. It wasn't a move or anything. It was just like, "Hey, Gary, how's it going?" And then boom, I was there. And I came out of the route, and the ball wasn't there. Normally the ball's there, but Doug had such a cannon. I go, "Where's the ball?" And bam, it was on me so quick. And it's one where you reach over your shoulders. I caught it. It was such a tight spiral. He threw it 100 miles an hour, but the spiral was so tight, it would just stick to your hands. And that's why they brought me in, because nobody could catch his ball. And at the end of the year, we ended up beating them. At the end of the year, and Gary afterwards said, I said, "That one little look." He goes, "I know. I can't believe I got hooked into it." But at the end of the year, I came back, and the Tampa Bay Booster Club gave me a trophy, Offensive Play of the Year.
Wow.
Right? So I
wow.
back, Doug's in the training camp. Doug's locker's next to mine. He sees the trophy in there. Boyd Dowler picked it up for me. The former Packer receiver was our coach. And Doug looks at it and goes, "Ain't that a bitch? I've thrown 400 touchdowns. You catch one and they give you a trophy. You think they're dying for a white boy around here or what?" Doug is the black quarterback. All the skill positions were black. This is 1980, before a lot of only 3 or 4 black quarterbacks had been in the league.
Yeah.
I always, anytime I do radio with Doug, I'll tell the story. But it was amazing. And then I ended up getting traded back to the 49ers that year. I was only there 6 games, and we went to the Super Bowl that year.
Right.
So anyway, the post corner was my route. And I could run a hell of a square end. I didn't like to. But the Niners didn't really run the square end. I always tease Jerry, that's why he lasted 20 years. He didn't have to run the square end.
The square end is where you're basically running into the help, right? That linebacker is right there.
Backers and right in front of the safeties.
Yeah.
So the ball has to go over the linebackers and under the safeties, so there's a little lift to it. And it's you're going to get hit. So it's like they said, you're going to get knocked out, so you might as well catch it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we touched base on a few other things. The Niners, obviously, they drafted some young guys. Obviously, talked about Trey Lance. Trey Sermon is a guy who I think is actually going to be. I don't know why more fans are not high on Trey Sermon. Yeah, they like the pick. I call me crazy. I think Trey Sermon will go over 1,000 scrimmage yards this year. I think he might be in line for Offensive Rookie of the Year because I think he's going to end up having the lion's share of the reps with all these injuries. I can't count on Raheem Mostert being healthy for a full 16-game schedule or a 17-game schedule. If Trey Sermon gets the lion's share of the reps, am I wrong for thinking that Trey Sermon's going to be a beast in that offense?
Remind me what college he went to.
Ohio State University.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. So there's another one who knows how to play in a big game. I always thought Mostert was more of a change-up back with his speed. And we saw it a little bit. He's a track guy who can run straight ahead. But a lot of running backs can't get their hips turned, when they're running wide. So they got to turn their whole body to go upfield. Now, that zone running scheme that they have, you kind of can just get the ball and take an angle and go. But I tell you, what's the other guy, the big power back? I'm sorry, I can't remember.
For the Niners?
Niners, yeah.
Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson.
Wilson. I'd almost start Wilson because he's a power, beat him up a little bit. And then all of a sudden you bring in Mostert with that speed. But he doesn't seem to like Wilson that much. So maybe you're right. Maybe Sermon gets a lot of the takes. But you're going to have an unsatisfied player in Mostert if he's not a starter. We all think we're starters, and then when I got moved to a third receiver, then I realized, well, number one, I'll play a lot longer. Number two, it's better me in the slot. Kind of fits my game better. So you just got to understand what's best for the team.
Right.
But everybody, and running backs is a position where you got to get a feel for the defense. You get a couple runs, you get a feel, okay, they're closing on this gap. They're doing this out wide. So to go in and out at running back's a tough position to do that at. So, but like you said, with these injuries these guys have, maybe Sermon will be the guy. So didn't they have JaMychal Hasty? Did they retain him?
Yep.
Too?
They still have him, yeah.
He's another change of pace back too, kind of a really quick and really powerful.
Yeah.
So I think they're set at that position if they can keep them all healthy. But you're right, Sermon, you never know. And he's the guy you're going to give him a lot of reps in the preseason because running back is a position really where you can come right in and play.
Yes.
Even if you don't know the offense that well, there's only 2 or 3 places you can run. If you figure that out, you pick it up as you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be interesting. And
all right. Go ahead.
I was thinking about the safety who had the torn ACL.
Tarvarius Moore.
And no. They just signed him. He's coming off it.
Oh, Tony Jefferson.
Yes. Now they gave him some money. I don't know if they picked up his contract, but he might be making more than Ward is back there, which, that's never good for camaraderie either. You got a supposed backup making more than a starter. That'll create more issues in the locker room than anything.
Yeah.
Then they started posting salaries late in my career, and you're like, what? What? He's making that, and I'm making this? So believe it or not,
talk about that.
Talk about.
Talk about that. Talk about the locker room dynamic in terms of financial, because the NFL is a business. And I think people here in the BEASTwriter family need to understand that. The NFL is a business. The business side of it is what you're talking about. And that's something that not very many people want to talk about, but salary does play a role in the locker room dynamic. If someone's making more than you and you're a better player than that guy, and you're obviously been to like Pro Bowlers or all pros, but yet this guy is making more money than you, don't you look at that and be like, why? Why
Well,
is that?
when I played, we were all making about the same thing. Like the average salary at my position was 75 grand.
Okay.
So I was kind of in that window when I was a starter, and then so it was a little easier to take. Nowadays, you've got the rookie contracts.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of slotted according to your pick, so you have nothing to do with it. And unfortunately, those are 4 to 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
the average lifespan's 3.8. So you might not make it to your second contract.
Right.
But
right.
the average now for rookies is so much. It's more than I made in my entire career. So there's more of a distinction now with superstar players and their salaries. It's like the max contracts in the NBA. Curry's making $40 million a game. That's 500 grand. I mean, 800 or 40 million a season. That's 500 grand a game. It's ridiculous. And the owner's got to step up and say, no, I'm not paying this kind of money. So it's good for them, for the players for getting it. But, Jimmy G's making 25 million, and that looks like a good contract now, because guys are jumping up in 35 and 40 million at the quarterback position. So you're kind of paid by your position. In some ways, it's not fair, but maybe a fullback isn't considered as important as another position. So you're not going to make as much as maybe a wide receiver can. But at some point, I think now it's more, hey, I'm at my position. This is what I can make, and that's it. So I don't think it figures in, but you could be at your position. And, Ayuk's making something, Debo's making something. They talk.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
And they could be like, what? What? Oh, I got to talk to my agent. This is bullshit, So
that happens, bro. We know we're there. We're there.
In football, because the career doesn't last that long.
Exactly.
And
all right.
Crippled. I got a question here. Shu, do you consider Walsh the GOAT? And for those who don't know what the GOAT is, it's the greatest of all time. Your generation talks in acronyms, So I'm always asking my daughter, "What's LMAO mean?" So anyway, I consider Bill the greatest coach of his era, and he, I think you consider coaches and what they contributed to the game. So Bill created the West Coast offense. The cover 2 defense was created to stop the West Coast offense. So there's 2 things that figure into why he was here. Then his coaching tree is just phenomenal. Mike Holmgren, Mariucci, all these guys, George Seifert. It just goes on and on and on. So, yeah, I think of his day, you go to Lombardi, probably Don Shula, then Bill Walsh, then Belichick. I'd say those 4. If you're a Mount Rushmore and there are a 5th one, yeah, that'd be tough to find the 5th one. But no, I think Bill definitely is the GOAT of all time. And he was different. Like when I was with Shula, they'd let them haze the rookies. And if you didn't sing your fight song at dinner, we'd rush in and eat so fast so we wouldn't have to sing our fight songs. Stand up on your chair. And I didn't even know mine at Florida State. So, and if you didn't sing it, they threw you out in a sewer pond outside the cafeteria. Nobody wants to be thrown in a sewer pond. So, and you can mess a rookie's mind up by hazing. And Bill didn't believe in it as a result. So I got to the Niners at the end of my first year, started hazing Dwight. Dwight was my rookie. And they're like, oh, no, we don't haze here. And he talked about it at the beginning of the year in his first talk. No hazing the rookies. And all the veterans are looking at each other like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, we still made him go get donuts and go grab lunch, stuff like that. But because I know there's a couple of teams I played on, I won't mention who, but I kind of, got in some of these rookies' heads and ended up keeping my job for a couple more years because I got to them so much.
Really?
And it was more of a business. Like they drafted this kid, like they drafted Dwight, basically to take my job. Well, I'm going to make it take as long as it can for him to learn the offense, and because Dwight didn't play that much either in college. So you're looking out for yourself. At the same time, you want to be a team player. So it's a real dichotomy in a sport that has such a short lifespan. So you're played 3 years and all of a sudden they're bringing this kid in, they're going to get rid of you. You might not get to your pension for 4 years.
Right.
So that's the business part of it. You talk with each other about salaries. Most guys, I don't know how it is these days, but and then they started printing our salaries. Then you'd come in and go, dude, I can't believe you're making this little. Are you making that much? So yeah, it's a big difference. And but Bill would not let you haze the rookies.
Wow, I didn't know that. I did not know that.
There was, like when Ronaldo Nehemiah came in, they were putting pacifiers on his locker. He was Bill's baby, the defensive backs. Bill wouldn't let him go one-on-one because he didn't want to ruin his confidence this early in his career. He never played football. Every day I go, so you're going to try one-on-one with us today? And he goes, well, the coach lets me, So it was just interesting to watch. And Ronnie Lott, I hazed him to death. I called him a lot of money, and because he got one of the first big contracts with the rookies, and they held out. I go, who holds out on a 2-14 team? So there was ways to sneak it in, and but Bill was definitely a GOAT and ahead of his time. Really planned, synchronized practices. Planned out to a T, and we'd run to every drill. We did a lot of classroom work, which they didn't back then. So he was way ahead of his time in so many different ways, and he got a lot of it from Paul Brown. But yeah, he definitely was the GOAT.
Here's a question from Don Lovato. He says, Mike Shumann, who was your roommate on the 49ers, and did you ever play jokes on each other?
Oh, yeah. Mine was Dwight Clark. It was Freddie Solomon. And even back then, in the late 70s, they didn't put black and white guys together as roommates. There'd be certain guys that you had to in positions. Like me, they kept, 3 brothers and me at the wide receiver position. There's only kept 4 guys. So Freddie, I knew from Florida. He played at University of Tampa, so I knew of him, and we became fast friends when I came out because he was traded from the Dolphins. That's why I went to the Dolphins.
Right.
So I with him, so we became fast friends and roommates. Then when Dwight came in, Dwight and I became roommates, and we played all kind of different pranks on each other, and it was. And I'll tell you who was the biggest prankster was Joe Montana.
Really?
Yeah, he. They had special teams practice. And I was a holder for special teams, but if you wanted to as a holder, you could go, but they'd say, dude, no problem if you don't make it. So Joe and I were the holders. So we would play a lot of practical jokes on guys. So one of the best, and I did this one. It was, they started randomly drug testing in the NFL. This is late 70s, early 80s. There was a lot more drugs available to players back then and unmonitored, so I came in, I went to the trainer, got some letterhead, and put random drug test today. Please see Lindsay, or no, who was it back then? I think it was Hal Wyatt. Please see Hal. And he just typed up a bunch of them, and we Xeroxed a bunch of them. So I went and put them on lockers of guys who I know who might have partaken in the previous night, and then got a little thing to do a urine sample in. I put orange and green Gatorade in it and shook it up. So it looked like a urine sample. So I put one on my locker, put the urine sample in the locker. The guys were coming up and they'd read, you could see their faces when they read their, oh shit. And they'd look over at me and I'd point to my note. And I said, I just did mine, man. So good luck. And so they'd all go do the sample. They'd take it into Hal, and Hal would go, what the fuck is this? And he goes, well, it's set on my locker. He goes, go talk to Shumann. So they'd come out so mad, wanted to just fight me, so it was just, I had more laughs that day. And then Freddie was onto it too. And we did it to about 10 guys. And oh my God, I had more laughs that day. And I said, hey, but it also served a purpose. Hey, they're random drug testing now. You can do all this stuff you're doing in the off season. During the season, stay dry, stay healthy, because I don't want you to cost us a football game because you're in the bathroom snorting something you shouldn't be doing.
Right.
So this is stuff you had to deal with also as a head coach, because we got Hollywood Henderson that came in here and had a big trouble with him in terms of that situation. And Bill was all new to this. So he wasn't sure what to do. Hollywood come in sick every day, couldn't practice. Finally figured out what was going on, and he put him out on the field one day. He came into a meeting and said, hey, I want to try and run this play. Everybody out on the field. ran a play, filmed it, had Hollywood in the film, and cut him later that day because they got him on film practicing. You couldn't cut a guy who was supposedly injured, but if you had him out there practicing, so Bill circumvented what he had to get him off the roster because he was affecting so many young players. Jeez. You get a veteran player come in from another team who's got some kind of drug problem, well, he's going to influence a lot of younger players who might think this is the way it is in the NFL.
Yeah.
So it was a lot different back then, but Joe was also pretty, I remember, I think it was, I don't know, it might have been Bill's bicycle up in Rockland. He put it up in the tree. Just put it on a branch up in the tree, and Bill came out, and he's looking, he goes, "Where's my bike?" And Joe was right there, and he kind of looked up, and, there was Bill's bike, and Bill just looked at Joe, and Joe, "Oh, no, Joe just took off on his bike." So, and then Bill, he dressed up as the guy at the Super Bowl, the bellhop at the Super Bowl, so he was doing the similar things to us, so anyway, it was a piece of work. He had all the coaches dressed up. We were playing LA for the first time, the Rams, and Bill was so worried about us going to LA.
Why?
Into Hollywood and partying. And so he had Bob McKittrick dress up as a hooker, Sam Weiss dress up as a pimp. Let's see, George Seifert maybe as a drug dealer. And he would bring them up individually, outside the office. Now, this is a hooker. You don't want to get into escorts or anything like that. He'd bring somebody else. It was hysterical. You see Bob McKittrick in this wig, in his shorts. I mean, I wish we could have filmed our headphones back then. We would have all been filming it.
Oh, that would have been a million of hits. I would love to have seen that.
Dude, and speaking of which, I talked to a coach last year. He goes, "Shoot, we sit in a meeting, watch film for about 15 minutes, and then we got to give everybody a 5-minute break to check their phones. Because your generation and below cannot go 10 minutes without looking at their phone."
No, like 10 seconds.
Who's texting me? Nobody calls you guys. Who's texting me? Who's Insta me? It's just unbelievable. I said, "Are you kidding me?" Because we can't keep their attention span otherwise. We give them a 5-minute break for the phone, get back in here, and then they'll watch some more film, another 5-minute break, and then they go. Before they go out to practice, check your phones, It's just ridiculous. So these things have taken over the world. I mean, the internet's going to put newspapers, TV and radio out of business, I mean, look what you have to do now. You got to write, you got to put out these shows, you got to create product all day, to be an effective beat writer. So, and I've said this before, you're one of the best that does it. So
thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Well, shoot, thank you so much for hopping on the BEASTwriter Family show. Honored to have you here in the BEASTwriter Family, and always good times, man. The Niner fans love to hear your stories because you actually provide great insight, not only as a really good football player, but the player's perspective outside of football and off the field. So hearing these stories, I think, resonates with a lot of fans who, in today's society, you talk about it. A lot of these players don't want to talk about this stuff, or they can't. You're very transparent, and I appreciate that. And again, thank you for the love and support, man. Always appreciate you having me.
Is this how it goes? I see you got.
There you go. You got it, bro. You got it.
Well, it makes all right, cool.
You got it.
All right,
you got it.
Anytime, Beast Mode, and nice to talk to you.
All right, buddy. Take it easy.
All right.